Gary, the topic we are going to be talking about today is three practice building technologies worth considering. And I really enjoy this topic because I love technology. You know me, like I'm the one who typically buys the first version of anything. The only thing I haven't bought yet is that Apple Vision Pro. That I'm waiting, but but typically I'm like usually the first one to try new things. So there is a segment of population who likes technology, and they are picking practices that are much more technology oriented and much more about you know doing the best work for patients, regardless of whether it's coming from AI or whether it's coming from 10 years of research. So they just want to make sure that these patients want to make sure they're getting the best. So, Gary, I'm really curious. I know you have been following this topic of technology for a long, long time. So in 2024, what are some of the things that's kind of at the top of your mind?
Yeah, I think you're right, Naren, that first of all, I also wear that nerd badge with honor. I love technology. I use it. We use it at Life Smiles. We use it in my coaching work, and I use it personally. And I just absolutely love the marvels of technology. And I believe strongly that there is a segment of the population that equates technology with advanced, with modern, with up to date. Would you agree that those kind of descriptors appeal to a certain segment of the population?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
they want
Absolutely.
to go to an up to date office. I mean, can you imagine, Naren? And these still exist. Can you imagine walking into an office that still had cuspidors? Remember what those cuspidors are, Naren? Those are
Yes.
those porcelain toilet bowls that people would, spit into. Well, of course, we don't need those anymore with, suction. But there are offices that look like they're right out of the 1970s. And what does that say to the patient? What does it say? What do they if they
Yeah, I mean,
see?
like if my life is online or my health is online, do I want to go to somebody who's keeping up or who's not keeping up, right? Like, I mean, I personally wouldn't, Gary. I'm not sure about you, but if there is a signal like that, I'm like, I don't know if I made the right choice.
Right, right. And so, you have to think about it's certainly, no matter where you are in the country, dentistry is competitive. There are unless you're, in that one county in Kansas that has one dentist. There is a county in Kansas that has one dentist.
I'm sure
And
that is.
I doubt that doctor is listening to the podcast. I sincerely doubt that. But unless you're there, we have to appeal to the public and roll the red carpet out and welcome them into the practice. Let me give you an example that is, frankly, to the public, it's perceived very differently than it is to us in the profession. And I'm talking about lasers. Now, lasers have been around for a long time, Naren, regardless of what the technology of the laser, but let's just use diode laser. Diode lasers have been around for a long time. But to this day, if you mention that, when appropriate, we use a laser in the practice, guess what many people will assume? They'll assume that you're absolutely state of the art, because it's a laser, right? And it's been around for a long time. That technology's been around for a long time. But the public doesn't necessarily know the nuances of technology. But we want to make sure we're presenting an up-to-date, modern, dare I say, state-of-the-art office. State-of-the-art office. And certainly that can have to do with our design and appointments in the office as well, the way it looks. If you still have ankle-high shag carpet, we need to get rid of that. But as far as technology goes, there's a way to invest in technology that also represents state of the art to our patients, but it's a very useful practice builder in the practice. I'm going to mention three today. I'll list them and then we'll go back and talk about each one of them. I'll number them 1 through 3. Number 1, CBCT, a cone beam imaging machine. I would stop short of saying it's required today, but we're starting to move that way with the CBCT. Number 2, again, it's not new, but it's something that has become embraced by many practices, a digital scanner for impressions. And then number three, definitely more along the lines of coming attractions, but I think it's there already, is a 3D printer, Those are three practice building technologies that are relatively affordable, at least if you buy them right. They're relatively affordable. It's not going to break the bank. And they do allow you, we get immediate application in your practice on these technologies. And they help represent your practice as the state-of-the-art practice. Let's go back and talk about a CBCT. If you are placing implants in your practice, I'm going to go out on a limb and say we need a 3D image. We need a 3D image today. That represents standard of care today. Naren, imagine, let me deal with it from a different standpoint. Imagine that something goes wrong with a dental implant. Let's say it fails and causes some issues. Now that can happen, correct, Naren?
Yes, it can.
Yeah, it can happen. And imagine that somehow this, failure ends up in, some kind of legal action. And imagine that it goes to court. Now, usually these things don't go to court. Usually they get settled by your insurance, your malpractice insurance. Usually those things get settled. But can you imagine being on the stand as a dentist? Dr. Nairn, did you take I believe what they call that is a 3D cone beam image on that patient? Did you take one?
No.
And the answer, no, I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then imagine we call an expert witness up, and the expert witness's job is to say that 3D cone beam images are absolutely, standard of care today. How does the jury look at you now, Naren, for not having taken that image?
Right.
You look negligent.
Yeah, exactly.
Now the question is, do you need one in your office? That's I think
fair question.
A fair question. Do you need one in your office? And usually that could be justified by the volume of implants that you're placing. In some cases, if you're in a urban area or even suburban area, there's many imaging centers. You can send the patient out for those. But I personally think when you have the technology in your practice, you're going to use it more. And then you're going to find much more application for it when you have it there. When you just walk down the hall and use it, it's absolutely something that you're going to avail yourself of and take advantage of, as opposed to sending the patient somewhere else. And as soon as you send a patient somewhere else, you lose control of the experience.
Right.
And what if the team members at the imaging center don't practice the same approach to patient care as you do? That reflects poorly on you because you referred the patient over there.
Yeah, I can go both ways on this. On one hand, it's expensive. So if you can't use it, then you're going to have this expensive machine sitting there and, eating up your monthly payments. On the other hand, like I know one of my dentists wanted me to go and get an impression somewhere. I didn't want to bother. Like I'm not totally sold. I'm not excited about this. Now I have to go somewhere else and this
Never
and
mind.
that. Yeah, never mind. Yeah.
It's a hassle to the patient.
Yeah.
I mean, you can simply do the math and figure out how many images would you have to take to justify, your payment on the CBCT. And one suggestion I'm going to make here is I do like the latest greatest, but there'd be nothing wrong, in my opinion, with finding, say, a generation, not the latest generation of CBCT, but maybe the previous generation. We have a client that looked at a brand new CBCT, and it was going to be about 160 grand. And he said, I just don't know if I can justify that in the practice. He ended up buying a 2-year-old previous generation, did about 98% of what the latest generation did.
It's a used one, right?
Yeah, it's used. Yeah. But frankly, the 2% that wasn't there wasn't even missed with his application in the practice.
How much did that cost, Kevin?
59.
Wow.
So 160 versus 59. Now all of a sudden it's a different scenario, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's lots of applications for CBC, but certainly if you're wanting to grow the implant component of your practice, I would strongly recommend using a CBCT. We have a client that offers, he likes to do replacing floppy lower dentures with an all-on X, implant solution. And he does complimentary implant consultations, complimentary implant. The idea is that the patient will come in, and it's for specific, not just for an implant, but this is for replacing a floppy lower denture. So we know that's a decent case, right? There, that's a nice size case in terms of value. And so he offers a complimentary implant consultation. They come in, they schedule an hour for that. They get to see the office, they get to meet the team, they get to meet the doctor, and then talk about what's going on in their mouth. And he said, well, the next step to determine if you're a candidate for implants to replace that floppy lower denture is we need to take a 3D image. And we actually have that technology right here in our office. It's right here. We point to it down the hall. It's right here. And we could actually do that for you right now. And we'll extend that as a courtesy to you. So my client offers it for these consultations at no cost. So they take the 3D image. They have the information they need. You know, George, good news. You are a great candidate, as I thought, but now the image confirmed it. The likelihood that that patient is going to schedule, Darren, what do you think the likelihood of that patient is going to schedule now? We tell the patient, there are offices that don't have this technology. You have to go to an imaging center, and typically the imaging center charges $350 to $400 to have that image done. Well, we can do it for you here, and we'll do it at no cost. We just want you to have the information so you make good decisions. How does that patient feel? What of the 7 fundamental principles of influence is at play here, Darren? I put you on the spot. You better get this one right.
Commitment, like
and
commitment and consistency, and
reciprocity.
I
gave you something.
Of course.
But
Yeah,
no,
give me
you're right.
something,
There's
yeah.
actually multiple elements of influence at play here.
Because-
Commitment, consistency, and reciprocity. I gave him something worth $400.
Right.
My client says, some patients say, you really aren't going to charge me for that? No, we just want you to have the information so you can make good decisions. Wow.
Right.
Thanks, Doc.
I
Yeah.
agree. Makes total sense.
All right. So if you're at all, in the implant world, CBCT.